Hi guys, this is Ukraine today. Ukrainian warriors are fighting desperately near Pokrovsk and Kupiansk. In the Kharkiv region, the enemy's assault has been stopped and the armed forces of Ukraine have pushed the Russians back. Kyrylo Budanov's special operation continues. Intelligence fighters landed from helicopters and broke through the front near Pokrovsk. The Eternal Emperor Vladimir Putin plans to rule Russia until 2050 and then hand power to his illegitimate son Ivan. A bombshell investigation by British journalists. A gift from Putin to Trump. Russia may hand over its nuclear-capable Oreshnik missile to Venezuelan dictator Nicolás Maduro. The aggressor state has upgraded its long-range Shahed drones, and the worst part, American technology helped make it happen. This is Ukraine Today. I'm Sima Shalenka and we're getting started. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. In the comments, tell us your city and country and whether you stand with Ukraine in our fight for freedom. Your support means the world to us. Russian terrorists have murdered 2 civilians and a dog who were walking under a white flag in the Kharkiv region. The war crime happened in the village of Krugliakivka. The invaders struck the civilians with an FPV drone, no military targets nearby, just innocent people. They filmed the attacks themselves to tweet the footage for propaganda and blamed the Ukrainian army. We will not show you those frames, they are too hard to watch. Heavy battles continue around Pokrovsk. The occupiers are trying to encircle Ukrainian defenders and take the city at any cost. Putin's generals are throwing wave after wave of soldiers into the fire. The streets are covered with corpses, enemy losses are massive. But the armed forces of Ukraine are holding the line, once again proving Putin's lies about complete encirclement are nothing but propaganda. More from the hottest point of the front line right after this.
And indeed, the enemy is present in almost every district and neighborhood of the city.
The most difficult direction is Syrsky, and Budanov are already there. The Pokrovsky direction remains the hottest spot of combat clashes. But as Syrsky reports, the city is holding on.
In the Pokrovske-Yanohorodka agglomeration, our soldiers have to withstand the pressure of an enemy force numbering in the thousands, which continues its attempts to infiltrate residential areas and cut off our supply routes. However, there is no encirclement or blockade of the cities. We are doing everything possible to maintain logistics.
But just how close are the enemy forces to encircling or blockading the city?
Formally, the city is not encircled. Formally, yes, it is indeed not encircled, but in practice, the airspace is closed off. In reality, delivering equipment, ammunition, or personnel there and bringing people back has become almost impossible. Any vehicle traveling on that road is guaranteed to be hit. The width of the bottleneck needed to completely close this cauldron is about 5 kilometers.
The head of the GUR, Budanov, was also spotted near Syrsky. It is assumed that he is personally involved in coordinating the defense.
Mr. Syrsky went there solely to show that there is no encirclement. In other words, he proved all the Russian propagandists wrong. He arrived on site and showed everyone that there is no encirclement, no ring. But again, we don't know how deep into the city he actually went.
But still, the main task lies elsewhere.
The question is not about holding the city. The question is about buying time and allowing our troops to get out of this pocket, especially down there, to the south, at the bottom. When you look at this pocket, you can see that our units, our soldiers are there as well. To give them the opportunity to get out of the encirclement, and if possible, to take out as much equipment, vehicles, and various types of weapons as they can.
Budanov led the GUR airborne operation in Pokrovsk. Now, groups from Special Operations Forces, Military Law Enforcement, Security Service of Ukraine, and other defense forces units are operating there.
It's not about having the GUR fighters completely and absolutely stop the forward advance and movement of the Russian army in its tracks. The main point here is to buy precious time, a day, 2 days, 3 days, or maybe even as much as a week, so that our troops and military units can get out of this dangerous encirclement and escape from this situation much faster and more efficiently.
Nevertheless, the situation in Pokrovsk does not prevent Ukrainian forces from successfully eliminating the occupiers in the city one by one. Ukrainian forces have held the city for more than 13 months since the moment, according to the Russians' plan, it was supposed to fall. But even with the loss of the city, Ukraine will not be defeated.
Ukraine has gained time here, for itself and for the Europeans. In other words, over these 13 months, we have bought time for weapons production, re-equipment, and a reassessment of strategy. The Russians, without exaggeration, have lost time. In other words, they have wasted time. Yes, they will capture the city, maybe this week, next week, or by the end of the month, and they will be extremely pleased about it.
And yet, why has Russia intensified its offensive in this particular area right now?
Pokrovsk has simply become tiresome to keep showing in the constant reports from the Russian General Staff and the Kremlin. I think someone there just snapped, how much longer can this go on? You've been circling around it for 13 months now, you haven't had any success? Do something already. And of course the Russian military salute and are ready to sacrifice, I don't know, if it takes another 10,000, they'll sacrifice another 10,000 Russian soldiers just to achieve some result. Because everyone understands perfectly well, if you deliver results, you might get a hero of the Russian Federation star or a general's stripes.
Right now, the enemy is throwing in everything they can. For Russia, the concept of cost doesn't exist. Every meter of land means thousands of Russian bodies, and all of it is just so the Kremlin dictator can put another checkmark on the map.
Ukrainian intelligence troops have launched a brave attack. They landed from helicopters, broke through the Russian front near Pokrovsk and released new battlefield footage. Drone strikes, tank duels, command post operations, all caught on video. After the landing, our troops opened a ground corridor to the unit that had been holding the position under constant fire. The special operation continues. The fighters are blocking Russian attempts to expand their fire control over key supply lines. Another victory. Ukrainian special forces from the main intelligence directorate cleared the gray zone on territory of the former Kakhovka reservoir, destroyed by Russians 2 years ago. The Bratstvo unit, part of the Timur Special Detachment, eliminated several occupiers near the area known as Veliki Kuchuguri, 7 kilometers from the coastline. They raised the blue and yellow flag over liberated ground. Success, although on the northeastern front. Ukrainian forces have stopped Russian advances near Kupiansk in the Kharkiv region. The battle continues. Let's see what's happening on that part of the front right now.
The situation in the Kupiansk direction remains difficult, but Ukrainian forces are confidently holding the defense and delivering precise strikes against Russian troops.
Russian plans to advance to the city center are currently failing. Moreover, there is reason for cautious optimism there, as even in the northern areas where they tried to concentrate their forces, things are not going so well for them now. They have been hit with several precise and heavy strikes, as a result of which their offensive there has now stalled.
They were used to it, but now they're being forced to change tactics. Instead of a direct breakthrough to the city center, the Russians are trying to bypass Kupiansk from the flanks.
If anyone ends up encircled there, it definitely won't be the Ukrainian forces. There aren't enough Russians in the city or in the right positions to encircle anyone.
Nevertheless, the situation of the so-called double aerial blockade remains. Russian drones are capable of attacking Ukrainian logistics while staying close to Kupiansk. However, Ukrainian drones are also delivering mirrored strikes against enemy infantry groups and equipment. Logistics are complicated for both sides, but control over key routes and transport hubs remains with the Ukrainian army.
At present, additional operational reserves of the Ukrainian Defense Forces have been deployed to Kupiansk in order to stabilize the situation in this settlement.
For the enemy, Kupiansk is not an end in itself, but rather a diversionary maneuver. According to experts, Russia is employing a 1,000 cuts tactic, creating tension in secondary areas to distract attention from the main strike. According to the General Staff, the highest intensity of fighting is currently being recorded in the Pokrovsk direction.
The occupiers are facing the issue of redeploying their operational reserves. The point is that due to the water barrier, the river that divides Kupiansk, the occupiers are unable to quickly transfer operational reserves and accordingly reinforce their assault groups. At the moment, the occupiers are trying to concentrate their main attack in the area of Kupiansk-Uzlovi. They are in dire need of control over this key railway station. The short logistics route, both from the territory of the Russian Federation and accordingly from the occupied areas of the Luhansk region, will allow the occupiers to create a strike group which will then plan to advance along the Oskil River toward the Sloviansk-Kramatorsk agglomeration.
Things are not going well for the occupiers in the rear either. Ukrainian forces are carrying out preemptive strikes on the enemy's strategic targets, on ammunition depots, and on fuel and lubricant supply points. The goal is to deprive the Russians of the ability to supply their assault groups and to slow down their advance even at the approaches.
Over the past week, Special Operations Forces unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, have successfully carried out a series of strikes on oil depots in the temporarily occupied areas of Luhansk region, which were being used to supply fuel and lubricants to units of the Russian occupation army, both in the Lyman direction and primarily in the Kupiansk direction. In particular, Special Operations Forces drones attacked oil depots in the occupied town of Starobilsk, which is precisely in the Kupiansk direction, as well as in Luhansk. Over the past day, drones from the Special Operations Forces of Ukraine's defense forces have struck a number of field ammunition depots in the temporarily occupied areas of Luhansk region, which is intended specifically to reduce the intensity of attacks by Russian occupiers in this direction.
But while the situation on the battlefield is far from a breakthrough, on television screens Moscow continues to claim victory. The Russian Ministry of Defense is once again reporting the capture of Kupiansk and the destruction of the 16th Mechanized Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. But there's one catch. Such a brigade doesn't exist. According to Moscow, this fictional brigade supposedly lost 8 soldiers, and Ukrainian units near Petrovka and Velika Shapkova ended up surrounded. The reality, however, remains unchanged. Heavy fighting continues near Kupiansk, but the city remains under Ukrainian control. Russian forces are taking losses, changing tactics, and searching for workarounds. And Ukrainian defenders, despite the pressure, continue to hold the line and once again shatter the myth of the Kremlin's invincible army.
Russia has gone completely off the rails and is now challenging Donald Trump directly. The Kremlin may transfer its ballistic Oreshnik missile capable of carrying a nuclear warhead to Venezuela. That's according to Russian MP Alexei Zhuravlev, who said Moscow sees no obstacles to arming a friendly nation. He reminded everyone Russia is already Venezuela's main military partner, supplying rifles, aircraft, and air defense systems. And with a smirk, he warned the US to expect surprises, because technically international law doesn't forbid Moscow from sending even caliber missiles to Caracas.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
The aggressor state has launched 4 times more Shahed drones against Ukraine compared to the last year. And now they are even harder to intercept. How did they do it? With Western-made components and American tech among them.
In addition to the war on the front lines, there is also a technological war going on.
Our enemy is, let's say, technologically dangerous, cunning and unpredictable because he can change everything in an instant.
Communication systems, control systems and electronic warfare play a significant role. The key issue is complexity in order to be able to withstand the enemy.
The speeds are no longer what they used to be. The enemy uses various means to make their drones less vulnerable to our electronic warfare. In
2024, jet-powered Shaheds equipped with electronic warfare countermeasures were spotted over Ukraine.
In fact, they are trying to turn the large, unwieldy Shahed into an FPV analog, which is controlled via radio channel directly from the territory of the Russian Federation or from occupied territory. That is, this Shahed is equipped with an onboard video camera that can transmit footage directly. And again, let me repeat, we're not talking about... This refers to the subject or topic that is currently being discussed or presented in this particular context, providing a clear point of reference for the information being conveyed.
It is not the first Shahed upgrade that the Russians have made in their attempts to bypass Ukrainian air defense. All RPI antennas are devices that allow drones to maintain navigation even under intense electronic warfare interference. These antennas are currently produced by Russia, but the technology was originally developed in Ukraine back in the early 2000s. Now, on enemy territory in 2025, the modernization of the birds of death continues. In
this lies the principle of electronic warfare, EW. Absolutely every component that a radio receiver has can be suppressed by it. Some are harder to suppress, some are easier. It depends on the type of signal. In this case, the suppression, I wouldn't say it's exactly easy because They use frequency hopping technology across the entire range, meaning it's resistant to EW suppression, but it's still quite possible to jam it. So for this, we just need to take a new approach, let's say, adapt ourselves to the Russians' new tactics.
The Russians have gone even further. They hid these antennas inside the body, remove them from the wing and move them inside the Shahed, right in the center. As a result, the enemy's drones are becoming virtually invulnerable to electronic warfare systems.
What does this tell an observant and intelligent person? It means that the factory has made modifications to the Shahed's body specifically for these Chinese antennas. This means the enemy is confident in a long-term and stable partnership with China. We are unable to jam such antennas with our existing electronic warfare systems everywhere across the country.
Sergei Beskresnov confirmed on Flash that this detail indicates close cooperation between Russia and China. Russian billionaires are doing everything they can to help Putin in this war, establishing contacts with China and the US, for example, Deripaska.
Access to technology and equipment is also closed off, and there is a list of items that are critical.
In 2024, the Russian LLC Angar 22 purchased Swivin turbojet engines for a total amount of about $300,000. Officially, they are intended for model aviation. However, these units later found a completely different use. They were installed on a jet-powered modification of the Iranian Shahed drone. At the same time, the owners of Angar 22 are classified and information about the beneficiaries is hidden. According to old registry data, the founder was the joint stock company Kraska, which was linked to Deripaska. Other subsidiary structures, according to documents, are only partially state-owned. But there is also the Yuginvest Development Corporation. It is associated with a structure belonging to the same Deripaska. We
know the experience of China. Free economic zones, minimal taxes, joint ventures.
Supplies to the company linked to Putin's wallet were delivered directly from the Chinese manufacturer Swivin, which also has an American branch, Swivin USA. Angar 22 is already under American sanctions. In fact, the story of Angar is an illustration of how the Russian military-industrial complex, cut off from Western technology, seeks workarounds, indirectly cooperating with the United States through China under the guise of scientific research.
Russia's share is the fourth largest in terms of value in China's overall trade turnover, which is a significantly important position. This matters to everyone.
Russia irregularly updates its drones to carry out attacks on Ukraine. In the Russian Federation, they have started making them even more deadly for strikes. During attacks on the Sumy region, Russian occupiers began using Shaheds with anti-tank mines attached to them. And
they continue to further scale up production. And as we should understand, having resources, having finances, having all the capabilities, they will not stop.
Monitoring groups report that the Russian Federation is preparing Shaheds with phosphorus munitions. Being within 150 meters of the impact zone can result in fatal outcomes. The Kremlin is betting specifically on cheap kamikaze drones, not missiles. That is why they plan to increase the production of Shaheds and other types of UAVs. A plan has been set to produce at least 36,000 strike drones. The Ukrainian side is not resting on its laurels and continues to work on improving its own interceptor drones. And not only that,
meanwhile, Putin wants to stay in power until 2050 and then hand the throne to his secret son, Ivan. According to British tabloid Daily Star, sitting journalist Ilya Davlichin, the 73-year-old dictator, already Russia's longest-serving ruler since Stalin, plans to govern until he's 97. What a plan! By then, his son Ivan, born to gymnast Alina Kabaeva, will turn 35. Coincidence? Hardly. We've got all the details coming up next.
Russian dictator Putin has already been in power longer than many of his predecessors, and a new publication only adds fuel to the fire of rumors, according to a British tabloid. He allegedly wants to stay in power until the age of 97. And
do you really think that people will be able to live to 150 years and beyond? Yes?
Yes. I think it was when we were heading to the parade that the chairman mentioned this. Well, yes, it means that at the time Mr. Berlusconi didn't actively pursue this topic.
His power is so concentrated that the question of when he will leave now sounds less like an expectation and more like rhetoric. The constitution was rewritten, the terms were reset, and he can remain president until 2036.
Modern means of health improvement, medical treatments, even various surgical procedures related to organ replacement allow humanity to hope that an active life will continue differently than it does today.
But the plans, it seems, are even broader. Putin's inner circle is reportedly overseeing projects related to life extension in which his eldest daughter, Maria Vorontsova, a doctor endocrinologist involved in scientific initiatives, also participates.
We know that Putin's eldest daughter, endocrinologist Maria Vorontsova, works in this same field. In a field where, to the delight of the ruling elders, technologies from a distant future are mixed together. Genome editing so that cell division does not degrade over time, 3D printing of entire organs, and various other worldly clownery, like meetings with shamans.
Perhaps it's no coincidence that we recently noticed a video where Putin and Xi Jinping discuss how human life will be significantly longer, as if preparing for a new era in which both the state and its leader will remain in power much longer.
In the past, people rarely lived to 70. Now, at 70, you're still a child. And how does Putin respond to that? With the help of biotechnology, organs can be replaced endlessly, and people might even achieve immortality. And how does Xi Jinping respond to that again? Some predict that in this century, people will be able to live up to 150 years.
Obviously, there will be no retirement. He clings to power, ruling not only today, but also the decades to come. And everything around him suggests that he has no intention of leaving the political stage anytime soon.
We have long known that the president of the Kurchatov Institute, Mikhail Kovalchuk, is not only obsessed with the genome of Russianness, not only talks about genetic weapons aimed exclusively at Slavs, but also leads large-scale research in the field of aging and its prevention.
A leader who has set a record for time in power, a school of management without a successor, and scientific technological projects in which his family is integrated. All of this forms a troubling image, the image of a person who is not just counting on another term, but on a long-term life in the seat of power.
There's nothing surprising about two elderly dictators meeting to discuss how to cheat death, just as there's no doubt that this question occupies their thoughts more and more with each passing year. How can they stop this perfect moment and make sure the future never comes? After all, in that future, they do not exist, which is absolutely unacceptable.
If the sources are to be believed, the price for this has been and remains extremely high, not just for him, but for the entire system in which he has become the center.
And finally, Russia's hybrid war moves west. The Polish General Staff warns the Kremlin is fueling anti-Ukrainian sentiment inside Poland. Russian agents are behind car arson, hate campaigns online, and attempts to twist history using the Volyn tragedy to turn Poles against Ukrainians. The goal? To undermine support from Ukraine and push Poland into Kremlin-friendly decisions. And it's already working. Anti-Ukrainian activity is rising in Gdynia and Gdansk, two key cities where weapons and humanitarian aid are shipped to Ukraine. And that's all for now. Thanks for being with us. And don't forget to like, share and subscribe so more people hear the truth. And tell us which country you're watching from and whether you stand with Ukraine. See you next time, and glory to Ukraine.